Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the vlog of many things. I am flying solo again today. Today is Tuesday, the 26th of August, 2025, and I want to talk about something that I have been seeing literally exploding online in the last 24 hours, and that is the executive order signed by Donald Trump yesterday making flag burning illegal. And I have seen a lot of people talk about it, even in gaming groups. And that's why I'm kind of doing this. And I see a lot of people who are flat out dead wrong about this. And I'm going to clarify this whole issue today in this video. And unlike another gaming vlog called Gamers on Games, I do my research. Dave, do research before you make posts. At any rate, um, for those of you who are living under a rock, yesterday on August 25th, Donald Trump signed an executive order making flag burning illegal. Now, why did he do this? Because flag burning by federal law has always been illegal. Bear with me. Bear with me. Now, if flag burning is illegal, then why did Donald Trump sign an executive order making it illegal? Well, because there was two cases that went to the federal courts that in fact said that the federal law banning flag burning is unconstitutional. In fact, flag burning is protected speech. So the US Supreme Court made a decision, two of them actually, stating that flag burning is in fact legal. Now, the first one was in a case called Texas versus Johnson, which was a 1989 case where the court determined that burning the American flag is considered symbolic speech. Okay, and that the government cannot suppress expression merely because it is considered offensive. Okay. Um, then, in another case, a year later, in the People versus Eichmann, or excuse me, the United States versus Eichmann, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down the Federal Flag Protection Act. They struck it down, which means it is no longer illegal. And it basically said that reinforcing, or excuse me, they struck down the Flag Protection Act. I want to get this right. And they said that basically reinforcing the government's interest in protecting the flag as a symbol does not outweigh First Amendment rights. Now, what do both of those cases say? Basically, what both those cases said was that the law, which was the Flag Protection Act, was illegal. Now, there's a reason why we have three co-branches of government. Okay? There's a reason why the judicial branch, which is the U.S. Supreme Court and the federal courts, are at the top of the food chain. The executive branch is in the middle. Congress is at the very bottom. Now, this is why the president has veto power. So basically, what can happen is the Congress basically can pass laws, make laws, etc. They send them to the president's desk for signature, and the president has the power of veto. He can say, "This law, I'm not approving." But this is why we have the judicial branch. The judicial branch, which is the federal courts and the U.S. Supreme Court, then have the power, because people can file lawsuits, which they have many times against all presidents. Get this done, and it goes to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court can say, "No, this is wrong. We're going to say this is wrong. This law is not proper." So, as an example, I'll give you an example. Roe versus Wade is a good example. Roe versus Wade was a U.S. Supreme Court decision making abortion legal in the United States. Gerald R. Ford, who was an ardent anti-abortion president, he was a very pro-life president. He was asked one time, "Are you going to use your powers to overturn Roe versus Wade?" And he said there was no sense in it because the Supreme Court already said that Roe versus Wade, they made the decision basically. Okay. And that he even said that he doesn't have the power to overturn the Supreme Court. Now, neither does Donald Trump. Now, this is very important because this is not a, Trump supporter versus anti-Trump, Trumper issue. This is not a Republican versus Democrat issue. This is a very simple issue of what powers does the president truly have? Now, people are saying it does not matter because Trump signed it yesterday and that's just the way it is. Get over it. But this is the problem. What Trump signed has no power, even as an executive order. It was functionary, demonstrative only. The president cannot, via executive order, just override a U.S. Supreme Court decision. Just as much as, and I'll use um, George Bush as an example, or Gerald R. Ford, who are very anti abortion presidents, they could not overturn Roe versus Wade. It had to go back to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is the only court in the land that can say, you know what, we erred in our decision and we're rescinding and making it again illegal, like they did with Roe versus Wade. So, you know, and I see politics get dragged into this in every single post. It turns into name calling, and it turns into, you're anti-Trump, you're anti-American. This is not an anti-American, anti-Trump issue. This is not a Republican versus Democrat issue. This is a really simple issue of law. And I support the fact that Donald Trump cannot, by executive order, overturn the Supreme Court, because giving a president that type of power is a very dangerous thing. And this is not a Trump issue. This is a presidential powers issue. And it's one that all people should really be against because, keep in mind one thing, whether you like him or you don't like him, Donald Trump's time in power is limited to 4 more years. What happens if a Democratic president gets elected next time? Do people want, if you're against Democrats and you're pro-Republican, which many people are, you have that right, United States of America. But think about it as what you wish for today, will you support later on if a person you do not like becomes in power? And, it doesn't matter if I'm ardent liberal, middle of the line, or ardent conservative or middle line conservative. I, as an American, do not want to see a person in the White House who just can start striking down laws by a pen sign that they don't like. Because that's a very dangerous road that we begin down in this country. And again, this transcends Democrat versus Republican. This transcends Trump supporter, anti-Trumper. What this is a matter of a thing called our Constitution and supporting the laws and our process that this country has had all along. Again, this is why we have 3 co-equal branches of government, because the judicial branch, which sits at the top, is there to ensure, and that's why the Supreme Court is not one person. Because we want a group of what we consider learned individuals, learned justices, to vote, to all of them look at the law and to say whether or not an existing law or decision is lawful. And the Supreme Court, yes, I have seen many decisions that I disagree with by the Supreme Court, and I have seen many decisions that I say, thank God the Supreme Court is there. So just wanted to clarify the law on this, does Trump have the power to overturn Supreme Court decisions? No, he does not. And again, I'm just triple clarifying this because this is such a hotbed issue when it comes to Donald Trump. This is not a statement against Donald Trump. This is a statement about the Presidential Powers Act and the ability for the president to sign executive orders. But they're highly limited, and they're limited for a reason. So this is Don from the Vlog of Many Things signing off. Hope you have a good Tuesday. I have had a crappy night. I might be making another video about that here later on. But going to be a challenging couple days. I'll just put it that way. So hope everybody has a good couple days. And I will probably see you guys on Thursday night, 8 o'clock with the regular crew. And happy gaming.